Welcome everybody to this month's monthly Zoom meeting. This is one of the features for the apprentice level memberships of Team Tate Academy. And I do want to remind everybody that is not a member. So we've opened up tonight with our special guest, Dr. Jenny, to anybody that wants to join. And it looks like so many of you were super excited about it. And we're thrilled to have you all here. Just a reminder that we do have open enrollment going, and it was such a big success earlier on in the enrollment period that we decided to bring it back for the last 3 days of enrollment. We're going to be offering 15% off of annual apprentice and working student members. Just a reminder that the monthly Zoom meetings happen every month. Replays are included with your membership, and they are included in the apprentice level membership. So as I mentioned, we've got JJ and Dr. Jenny Susser here to have a conversation tonight about empty tank syndrome, why resilience is not enough. Dr. Jenny is a clinical and sports psychologist who is specialized in working with athletes. She's worked with Olympic athletes and is just absolutely a brilliant mind and a ton of fun. So with that, I will turn it over to JJ and Dr. Jenny.
All right. So I also wanted to thank all of you guys for joining us in our Team Tate Academy. It is something near and dear to our hearts that, you know, we really want to help you guys develop as riders and thinking riders. And of course, there's a lot of exercises that we send you every week in the educational videos. They're kind of short to the point. They're like 12 minutes. It's me riding with a microphone to like tell you about, you know, what are all the elements of a shoulder in, you know, and it's so like riding focused. But as we all know, so much about riding is so much about who we are developing into. And Dr. Jenny has been someone near and dear to my heart ever since we met. I think, Dr. Jenny, what would you say? Maybe 10 years ago? Maybe longer.
Yeah, I remember I was looking for emails and I have an email from like 2009.
That's totally great, because I mean, a lot of people in the academy already like know I'm like, Dr. Jenny always says, you know, all these things that have really stuck with me, you know, since then. So that's fun that we actually have like an actual date of when it began. But I'm so excited to welcome you officially into the academy as our sports psychologist, and to help us all really grow and really discover more about ourselves. Like so often our horses are real mirrors into our own characters and our strengths and shortcomings. But I think to really open the conversation about, you know, burnout, being exhausted, feeling impatient, you know, I think this really hits home on a lot of levels. So I will open the floor up to you.
Well, thank you. It's always awesome to just talk with you, but then to be able to share it with a bunch of people. You know, when I first started in the horse world, you know, I came from different competitive sports, and I competed highly as an athlete myself. And when I got to the horse world and I saw that like there was this disconnect between, you know, what we do as riders and what we think as riders. And I could really see it. And then when I started to talk to people about sports psychology or psychology, you know, in equestrian, they'd ask me, is it for the horse or the rider? You know, like it was so, nobody knew what it was and nobody understood, you know, this is 20 years ago when I started talking to equestrians about sports psychology, and they were like, well, I don't really know what that is or why I would need that.
One will affect the other.
Yeah. And so over the years, the different, you know, forms that it has taken working with equestrians and trainers and riders and of all levels and many disciplines, it's been really fascinating. And because our mind is so busy when we're riding, it can be very challenging to try and figure out what do I need to be thinking about and when. And that is why I'm always talking about preparation and all of the work and the homework assignments that I give anyone that I work with. It's to do the work before you actually get on the horse, so that when you can get on the horse, there's a different state of mind and being available. And I think that that's really sort of become pervasive in equestrian. I see it all over. I love it when I see people talking about, who you are, how you're being. It is really important for your riding and how well you ride. And so, and then having trainers like you pushing people to better themselves mentally, psychologically, emotionally, so that they can be better for their horses. I mean, I think it's been a very interesting evolution, especially in the horse world.
Well, I think that's really powerful too, to have that sense of 20 years ago, people didn't know, are you helping my horse? And it's like, well, yes, but through you, because you're the rider. And I think it just really becomes a deep dive into, who you are, what you're thinking about, because the horse is reading all of those things, and it's just, whether that's self-worth, I just remember some interesting questions. You just ask the question and you're just like, well, I don't know, why I feel the need to do this thing, and it's like, well, let's unpack that a little bit, and then you just get into this, like the real, like with any good training, you get down to the real least common denominator of like, where is that actually coming from? And then how do we build that up from there? So I'm really interested about this whole concept of, this empty tank syndrome, because you hear that so often. And I, like, oh, I have burnout, or I'm exhausted all the time. And, I think it's a really challenging thing to be like high performance person. And then, oh, but I need to find this balance, in my life. How do I mix that? And actually being like more balanced is actually what promotes better performance, but we kind of miss that a little bit, where it's like, I got to get up at 4:00 in the morning and I gotta, ride and do all these things. And then it's like, and then you're exhausted and then you feel empty, and then it just snowballs from there, and it's just fascinating. Like, how do you balance those things?
Yeah, it's a super challenge these days. And where empty tank syndrome came from was that energy. I've been studying energy and the impact that energy has on performance for over a decade. And in everything that I've learned, it becomes more and more profound. And so now we have burnout as a condition, right? So the World Health Organization has declared burnout a condition. And so now we have this way to label yet another piece of our psyche and our exhaustion and our mood and our culture. And it's really like interesting and a little bit fascinating at the same time. But so if energy, my mentor, Jim Lair at the Human Performance Institute, was the one who introduced me to energy and the whole concept of it, and how to learn about it and how to teach it and how to study it, and all about resilience. And really, he defined energy as the fuel for performance. And so if we have good energy, I mean, we have good everything. Energy is the foundation. To me, it is the foundation for everything. If you have bad energy, if you don't have good energy, it's really hard to do anything well. Like if you feel tired, if you feel like crap, if you feel punchy, all of those things that we get. So I think, do you want me to share my I made a little PowerPoint because that's how I roll.
Yep, we love it. And I just think, like, I'm gonna jump in real quick while you get that up, because I think what's so amazing about how dressage is so related to all of this, right? It's like, of course, we need to be in a mental space, but even for the horses, right? Charles DeComfy, my mentor of 30 years, is like, we don't collect the horse, we collect his energy, you know, and so it is all about this like channeling of energy for the horse too. And it's like we have to kind of find our own way to channel and make sure that there's enough, you know, to even be channeling.
Yeah. It's really amazing. And so one of the things that I learned from Jim at HPI, you know, among the many, was that there is this dynamic relationship between how we spend energy and how we recover energy. And and I just really hadn't thought about it. And so we can use the word spend, and then we can also use the word stress. And and so I know, right? So don't get me started.
So like you to just sneak that in there. Oh, spend or
so
stress.
the interesting thing about the word stress is that there are, like, we use it very culturally, the word stress. But if you start, it originated, there was a man named Hans Selye, Selye, and he was an endocrinologist in Austria who started research. He, of course, always, you know, like Pavlov was not studying conditioning. He was studying digestion and dogs, and stumbled upon his great, you know, operant conditioning. And what Selye was studying was rats and their response to certain stressors. And he really discovered the impact that stress had on the health of a being. And so he started talking, about how stress could be, we have good stress and we have bad stress, and you have to have stress, right? So without stress, you die, right? The body dies, it atrophies and withers and goes away. And so we have to have this stress. But good stress and bad stress are really an interpretation, right? So, right. So you talk about, you know, I used to get this question all the time when I was first starting in sports psychology was, okay, well, you know, the football player, you know, there's 1 second left on the clock. You're on the 1 yard line. Do you want the ball? And half of the football players would say, God, no way. That's too much stress. And half of them would say, give me the ball now. Right. And so it's this interpretation, this perfect interpretation of how you view a situation and whether or not it's stressful, right? You look at a horse and you go, let me get on that horse. Right. And I look at the same horse and I go, I'll just watch you, you know, right. So, right. Or, you know, I look at a room with, you know, 1,500 people. I'm like, get me on this stage. And most people are like, oh God, no way. Right. So it's this interpretation of what occurs as stress then becomes a threat. And then what happens in our body as a result of feeling that kind of threat and that kind of stress. The problem these days, and the reason why we're all empty, is because that threat, just that it never lets up. It never goes away. We have so many avenues for threat and stress, right? We have this, we have you know, this, we have
can't get away from it.
20 you can't even my ring is a sleep device, you know what I mean? Like my ring will buzz me and say, isn't it time to stretch your legs a little bit? You've been sitting for too long, you know. So it's really constant. So we have this constant demand on our energy systems. And the reason why we end up with an empty tank is because we don't have as powerful a relationship to recovering energy as we do to spending energy. So I just want to take a second and mention to everybody that I'm going to try and monitor the chat a little bit. I tend to be okay at this. So Cerise is also monitoring it, and she will jump in if there's something really killer that we need to address. But make sure when you go in the chat that you set your to everyone so that everyone can see what's going on in the chat. And if you have things that you want to say or add, or if you have questions as we go, we'll try to get to them. Otherwise, we'll do it at the end, like Cerise mentioned, with the Q&A. So syndrome, really the place really where I came up with syndrome was the word syndrome is a collection of symptoms. right? And so we have a lot of diseases that have one symptom, and that's what turns us in that direction. But I found that, I mean, and I made this list in about 12 seconds, right? And then, okay, I'm just going to stop because it's like, you know, it is how we often feel. And when you start to get this way, it is because your energy is low. It's not because you're an awful, horrible human being. You know, like you don't get punchy because you're not evolved. You don't get confused easily because you're dumb. You know, you don't become unproductive because you're lazy. A lot of these things, these symptoms, I could take every single one of these symptoms and 100 more and trace them all back to the physiology and the cognitive problems that we get as a result of having an empty tank.
Fascinating.
You're studying. I can see how
I am. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, this is a lot, you know, and that's it's so hard nowadays because everything, like you're saying, like you can read your phone constantly. And, you know, like since my cancer diagnosis, I've really changed in a lot of ways because, you know, I'm like, did stress cause my cancer? You know, and it's like, I think it was more like my diet and whatever, but, and hormones obviously, but, you know, I had this conversation with my mom. I'm like, do you think I'm stressed? I'm like, I don't feel that stressed because I like to be like busy, you know, but it's like, I'm a really good rester. You know, everyone has this, and people are always like, are you resting enough? And I'm like, that's my jam. I mean, as like, as like high functioning, like high performance, I'm traveling, I'm riding, I'm enthusiastic all the time. Like I sleep at night, great. But the meditation has really, and we've talked about this, like go outside and walk around in nature for 5 minutes or take some deep breaths. Like you helped me with my box breathing right before my surgery. And it was like, that all makes all the difference. But it's also having that like mental discipline that it's like part of your daily practice of living a good life. You know, is this like, okay, I've got some of these things on this list, and like, how do I combat that and start to change a little bit my makeup about how I'm so exhausted, but I can't sleep. You know, that's a big one.
It's a really big one. And you know that it's funny you talk about cancer, and I was thinking about you the other day when I was looking the top 5 leading causes of death in the United States for the last 30 years are from what they consider preventable diseases. You know, number one is cardiac, right? Heart issues, heart, you know, congestive heart failure, stroke, heart attack, blood pressure issues. That is number one. Cardiac issues are number one across the board for the last 30 years.
It's crazy.
In the United States. Okay.
Yeah.
Cancer is third. And they consider that a preventable disease. The CDC was, which
yes,
I found
the more I'm learning about it, I was like, woof, girl, this started like 30 years ago when I started to eat bad.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is that, you know, you don't get an empty tank overnight, you know, and you don't become burned out. Like the key to the key to the definitions for burnout are really the chronic nature of the stress. You know, like you're burned out after years and years and years and years and years. It's not something that, oh my gosh, I just started this job, I'm so exhausted, I'm already burned out. No, you're not. You're just tired, right? And you're getting used to your new job. Okay. That's not how it rolls. So so it's interesting, you know, like over time what happens and how it happens. Now you may rest well, you may rest your body well, but if you and I were having a private conversation, and you'll have to tell me if this is too private, I would say, are you resting your mind too?
Well, and that's where the meditation has really been incredible and eye-opening. And clearly, if years ago I'd be like, well, I am too busy to meditate, which is problem number one, and then it was like, and I'm not going to be any good at it. And it's like, and that's exactly why you need to do it. And it's been amazing, the difference of how I feel. And I've always been like incredibly enthusiastic and really passionate. So I don't tire out easy, but it's been incredible how cancer has been the greatest gift of my life, to be able to focus on things like this, which then, by my example and us talking about it, can help affect so many more people, because it is totally different. Like, and I know a lot of people who are, stressed out and can't sleep either, but it's also like, well, I sleep okay, but then like this extra focus on the mental resting and inward focus and breath has been incredibly grounding and healthy, and just, I recommend it for everyone.
I have been meditating for since 1996. Started meditating in 1996. Were you born yet? No, I'm kidding. Usually I have plenty of
young
people.
rider team.
That's right. There are plenty of people in the audience who will go, yeah, I was not born yet. And my meditation practice has evolved, and it has gone in many different directions. But I will tell you, I followed a teacher named Pema Chodron. She's a Buddhist nun, and she is just unbelievably brilliant. If you haven't studied her or listened to her, she's hilarious, right? She's in her 80s now. But when I first I had gotten out of meditation, I was getting back into it. I hadn't meditated in a couple of years, and I was listening to some of her work. And she said the best thing ever. She said, I have meditated 50,000 hours in my life. I mean, like she's a Buddhist nun,
Yeah.
so she meditates
Yeah.
4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the evening. And, she's like, in the robes on the side of the mountaintop meditating.
Yeah.
And she goes, I've been doing this a really long time, and I still am really bad at it. And I was like, oh my God. Like,
well,
it was
right,
like a
like,
revelation.
Right. There's like this first piece of like, let's just normalize that meditation is difficult and hard. And here she is, like this expert. She's like, it's still hard. Just like dressage. It's still hard.
It's still hard. Yeah. Okay.
So
So we did get
interject.
Yeah.
We've got a great comment here from Bobby. If you're too busy to meditate, you need to meditate longer.
Oh yeah.
And,
no, I have changed my ways, girl.
And Angela Pronosal says, how do you start meditating? Any resources and advice on how to get started, please?
Sure.
I've got a great app called 10% Happier. That's been a really helpful one. It's really easy to follow, and just, it's great to like get started. I have found that helpful, but I'm sure Dr. Jenny's got some too.
Well, I'll give you my spiel, my Empire State Elevator speech, Empire State Building Elevator speech, right? Because it's not so the apps are fantastic. I'm a huge fan of meditating with apps, especially to get started. I have used one called Insight Timer for, I don't know how many years I've been on Insight Timer, a long time, but all of them, whether it's Breathe, Calm, Insight Timer, 10% Happier. There's also one called Buddha. What I would say is scroll through the app store and see which one you are attracted to, and then go there and grab that app. Every single one that I have ever played with has an introduction to meditation, like a 7 to 10 day course. And that's where you want to start. Like, I know Insight Timer has a 7-day introduction to meditation course that's free as soon as you sign up and create a login, even on their free version of their app. And what it is it's 7 days of 8 to 11 minutes of guided meditations to teach you about how to meditate. Guided meditations when you are first starting out, I think, are critical. And I think they just help you win the battle of how the hell do I do this?
Right.
Because
How do I sit alone with myself in the room in my own brain?
right. So the most important thing to know about starting a meditation practice is that it is a skill set, right? So
It's a practice.
being able to meditate is just like being able to do a shoulder in, and then being able to do a renverse traver, then being able to do a half pass, right? It evolves. And you piece it together, and it is amazing, wonderful. I don't even call it an onion, because to me it's more like a spiral, because it's just so fantastic. And the different ways that it has contributed to my life, and the things that it has helped me through, and the stages that I've been in my life. But it's a skill. It's a set of tools that you learn how to use, right? If you've never used a jigsaw, you better learn how to use it before you go and try and cut some wood or whatever. And so most people are like, I'm bad at it. Well, duh. If you decided that you wanted to play the violin and you'd never picked up a violin, would you be good at it just because you wanted to do it? No. And you wouldn't say, well, I'm not going to even bother. Or I tried it once and I just sucked at it. So those are the things that I hear all the time. And I think it's hard because it's not, it's not like learning to play the violin or tennis or something like that, where you can go and take lessons, and it's in your head, and the mind is a dangerous place to go alone. And so that's why I love the guided meditations. And it's something that if you take it on, I heard a great neuroscientist by the name of Richard Davidson, who I've also followed for a very long time. He's a brilliant, brilliant man. And he calls it his mental hygiene, right? So we have our dental hygiene, like everybody brushes their teeth. Anybody here not brush their teeth? Like,
is anybody going to actually admit to that?
Yeah, right.
Exactly. You're off the Zoom.
Yeah, you're out. Bad breath. You're out. But we do it because it's, our parents teach us to brush our teeth. Could you imagine if you taught your kids to meditate and to have quiet time and to be pensive and reflective and self-aware from that age? Like, what if we paired mental hygiene with dental hygiene? Let's meditate. So for me, it's not something that I refer to every now and again. It's a practice and a part of my life, and that's when it becomes the most powerful, as you will see. And you just got to hang in there and know that your first couple months are going to be really, can I say, shitty? They're going to be tough. They're going to be tough, and they're going to be frustrating. And it takes a little while before you start to feel those, but you will feel a change in your energy almost immediately. But to really have some of the mind changing, and the places that you begin to connect with on a much deeper level, soul level, that takes a little bit more time. So that's my spiel on meditation. One more thing about it, really, like, designate time for it. You can't just go, I'm going to try and squeeze some meditation in. That's like saying I'm going to try and squeeze some eating in, like, it doesn't work on the fly. You have to be focused and
committed.
Yeah. Same time every day. Mornings are best. So did that help? Whoever asked, somebody asked. Angela, yeah. And then someone just said, I meditate with a notebook. I journal what I'm grateful for, what my goals are, what my questions. Okay, yeah, that's okay. So that's not really meditation. That's a different type of reflective cognitive activity. The interesting thing about meditation is that when you make your body quiet, you can hear your mind differently. Right. So writing, I journal every day. I mean, I'm a fan. I am a huge fan of journaling. I meditate, and then I grab my journal and I sit down and I journal on what came up for me in my meditation. So they're two different processes. So Rebecca, I would encourage you to try the meditation with your body quiet and your eyes closed.
Well, and that's the whole thing too, with when you're sitting there and you're still. And, I love it. It always begins like, sit and know you're sitting. And I'm like, yeah, I need to do that all the time when I'm riding, and it's like these experiences will like come by you, but it doesn't need to affect you. Like, oh, I have an itch, like something, I need to like really scratch that. And it's like, just wait, it'll pass. And so if I
Yeah.
can like have that discipline inside my own experience inside myself, the other things that come into my life during the day, also, I don't have to react to, and I don't have to like itch that or scratch that itch, because I can just quiet and control my mind on it. Like, well, that's okay. You're having this staffing trouble, or like this problem at work, or this trouble, this problem that is consuming. It's like, or it can just like pass by you and you can not engage with it and just notice it. And then wait for the next thing you're going to notice, and then come back to your breath and sit and know you're sitting. And it sounds so simple, but it's huge. It's huge.
That is awesome. That is a really cool way to describe it. And you're right. For all of you budding meditators, if you're meditating and you have an itch on your nose, you are not to scratch it. You are to just be with it.
Notice it.
It is just an itch. Someone just asked, how do you know how much time to designate? So start short, start between 5 and 10 minutes for the first week. And especially if you follow one of those apps and their introductory courses, they'll be between, 5 and 10 minutes for your first couple. What you want to do is you want to win. You want to be able to sit for 5 minutes. And if you can do it for 5 minutes, and do it for 5 minutes, and then you do that for a couple of times and you're like, hey, that wasn't so hard. The minute you say, hey, that X amount of minutes wasn't so hard, then you go on. I mean, like if I do less than like 40 or 45 minutes, I kind of don't really like, it doesn't have the same impact. So you get to a place where okay, I just need to do more.
Well, it's the same thing like with sitting trot. Like first you sit the trot and your abs are burning and you're like, oh my God, whew, I sat like 5 minutes of sitting trot, and now it's like I ride all day long sitting trot. Yeah,
that is a lot of sitting trot.
I don't feel that anymore, and it's like it's the same type of exercise. And when you can think that your brain needs to be as exercised as the rest of your body, that's so you're already gonna like win the battle with recognizing that it's a muscle and you can practice it, and you have to just exactly what it's called, like practice.
Yeah, exactly. So with the empty tank syndrome and with us talking about meditation is one of my favorite ways to restore energy. And like I said, if energy is the fuel for performance, to me, it really is the foundation. Like if you think about, just every single thing you do, the quality and quantity of your energy has an impact on it, right? Performance, behavior, connection, communication, relationship, really everything. And one of the things that I cover in the empty tank syndrome course is a lot about the science of what happens in the brain and how energy is impacted and impacts the brain. It's a very symbiotic relationship. And the more energy we have, the more brain power we have. And the less energy we have, the less brain power we have. And I'm not talking about brain power to like solve a mathematical equation. I'm talking about brain power to generate higher order cognitions, right? So if you are tired and let's say your tank is on empty, your body and your brain know this and is going to automatically, without you knowing it, conserve energy for survival. Right? It's kind of like
the phone going on low battery mode.
Yes, that's awesome. I hadn't thought of that as an analogy. That is perfect, right? Your brain and your body go, okay, low glucose, low energy, low this, low that, the hormone production, all the different chemicals that have to do with energy in our body. Your brain knows this and begins to restrict. And so stuff like being generous or being curious or being communicative or being patient or having perspective, all of those things, poof, gone. When your energy is bad, you just don't have it. Like you'll do things and you'll be like, what the hell is wrong with me? That I'm not like that. That's not who I am. What just overtook my brain? Well, what just overtook your brain was, I'm sure you've heard, your reptile brain, your survival brain, because the rest of your brain was like, our frontal lobe, this piece, our prefrontal cortex, our frontal lobe is 40% of our brain. And it takes an extraordinary amount of energy to generate thought, curiosity, connection, computation, memory. All of those things take a ton of energy. And when you are low on energy, your brain just goes, forget about it. I'm just going to survive. And all of those things go out the door. And then we think we're bad. We think we're dumb. We think we're impatient. We think there's something wrong with us. We think we're mean. We think we're less than.
Then the shaming comes in. It's a bad road from there.
Yeah, it's a deep, dark road. And so when your energy is bad, what you want to do is you want to know exactly, what happens, if you're walking around and you hear yourself say, I feel bad, then you need energy. Like it's the easiest thing in the world. You don't need more information. You don't need some, like what you need is you need to increase the energy in your tank. Like we never let our phones go out of battery, right? Like who lets their like how often, like I remember when cell phones first came around, you heard about people, oh, my phone's dead, but nobody even said that because nobody even cared back then when their phone died. Like now it's like,
no
it's like
way.
a 3-alarm fire if your phone is dead.
Is down. I can't even follow. I won't even know how to get home if I don't have my phone.
Right? It's like, I can't even call my spouse because I don't know their phone number. Right. I mean, so many people don't know phone numbers, right? I heard a stand-up comedian say something like, I got arrested for drunk driving and the first thing they did was take my phone with all the phone numbers that I needed to call. Right. So okay, so someone asked, how can I get information on the empty tank class? And Cerise will provide that whenever she jumps in. I guess that'll be at the end. And someone just added in the chat, now I know why I forget my jump course. Totally. Let's talk about that for a second. One of the things that is the most amazing to me, and this is purely like a sympathetic nervous system response, is going to a dressage show, watching someone ride a lower level test, have a reader, and still go off course. Okay. First time I saw that, I was amazed. Someone just said me. Anna, thank you for your honesty.
Yes, no kidding.
That, my dear, was your threat response hijacking all of your cognitive energy. That's what happened. I mean, that's really, yep. Anyone who's ever done that, you make a silly mistake and you're like, what the heck is going on? So this is where when you're going from burnout to performance, right? So we have the empty tank of burnout and we have the empty tank of performance. And the tank empties very rapidly on the morning of a horse show because of all of the stress and the worry and the anticipation for what it is to get in the ring. And that's where a lot of the preparation work that we do with athletes, that I have athletes do, so that it becomes rote, right? You don't want to be thinking about where your stirrups are or your spurs or which saddle or which girth. You don't need to be thinking about those kinds of things. You also don't want to be thinking about your test. You want to know your test if you're a dressage. You want to know your course if you're a jumper. You got to get all these things handled. The more things that are handled and that you're prepared for, the less energy you have to spend on that mentally, and you can spend it on your performance, your expression of your performance. There's a difference between going in there and writing the test and then really doing a test, dancing with your horse. You have nothing to say about that, JJ?
No, I'm just looking at the comments. There's some really good comments coming in that like, yeah, no, it is so true. And like Carol says, you know, we always talk about like control the controllables, and it's like, know your test, get there early, you know, because it's interesting when you talk scientifically about what your brain actually does when it like feels threatened, you know, and it goes into that reptile brain that like you can still go off course with the reader. You know, you can, there's a lot of pieces you can have, like the discipline to control, but that also takes this practice of know my test, know where my stuff is, pack it all, not in the morning, right? Because in the morning, you're just already going to be like, wow, you know, like all excited about, you know, and just like you said, when we began, you know, you need nerves and adrenaline to have your best performance. So it's not like you should go to the show and not feel anything. Like it's important to like give your best, you know, performance with a little bit of adrenaline, but not so much that it like completely controls and changes your brain that like you forgot one glove, you know, or like whatever, you know, and you forgot to put his boots on when you went to lunge, you know, and it's like whatever you can forget. It's so easy to just get into that mental chaotic space. And it's like, that's where the breathing also can come in. And the practice from your meditation of like, slow everything down.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that, you know, a lot of the sayings that we have culturally are for a good reason, you know, haste makes waste.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember my grandmother telling me that all the time. I'd be running around the house, haste makes waste. And you want to just, you know, punch her because she's right. And it really is true. When we rush, we get into a threat mode. Like our brain interprets rush as threat. And so we lose blood flow up here, and it does shut down a little bit, and it does force us into, because really what rush is designed for is escaping, you know, like, so our reptile brain, our mammalian brain goes, oh crap, what am I running away from? What am I trying to survive here? And so it shuts off some higher order functionings. So
no, and like even at horse shows, like I, you know, write up on our daily board, you know, like I write up an earlier time for the horses to be ready, you know, so my grooms, because I'm like the one thing that's going to make my performance hectic and like not what I want it to be is if I feel rush getting on, then it just affects the whole entire warm up, you know, then I'm sharp with everybody around me, I'm impatient with the horse, he's not like, and then just like goes downhill from there. And so it's like factor in even like be ready early and then just wait and then just ground yourself and breathe and then get on and then do your normal warm-up that you always do. Ooh, that's a good question. Good question came in.
Is adrenal fatigue part of empty tank syndrome? Adrenal fatigue is when you have been, and when your tank has been empty for a very long time. So quickly, I'm not a physician, but what happens with the adrenal glands are responsible for, and they sit right on top of your kidneys. So sometimes really being exhausted, you can have low back pain, and it can be adrenal fatigue or not like a technical adrenal fatigue. But I remember at the end of nationals, like when I'd swim at nationals and we'd have a 4 or 5 day long swim meet, my lower back would be sore from that. But really what the adrenals are for is the adrenals push adrenaline. And that is at the core of our fight or flight. And what adrenaline does, it's epinephrine, norepinephrine, all of those, that's all the same chemical with different ways to talk about it. But adrenaline and epinephrine, norepinephrine, that rallies the system, the bodily systems, to a higher level of performance because you need to survive, right? So we get a burst of adrenaline when we have some sort of threat. right? Like someone cuts you off and
Yeah.
you're in the car and boom, like you start shaking and your legs start shaking, or you're getting ready to go in the show ring, or you get an email with all caps in the subject line, or your father calls you, I need to see you in my office, or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
that is the oh shit response, right? When you have the epinephrine and the adrenaline. Okay. Now, when we are under constant, persistent, repetitive threat, your adrenals will push and push and push and push. And every system in the body eventually has a tipping point. So from like a performance empty tank syndrome, adrenal fatigue, if you are diagnosed with adrenal fatigue, you have been tired and exhausted for far, far, far too long. Yeah, so there's so much that goes on with it. So one of the things that I ask people to start to bring their self-awareness to is how they relate to their own energy. And it's really fascinating because most people have no idea how they relate to their own energy. Like I remember when I first met Jim Lair, and he's like, how's your energy? And I'm like, good. I'm not even tired. And like, but, and so for us, like culturally, energy is really connected to fatigue, and it's not really connected to anything else. And energy has so many dimensions. It's multidimensional. It has width and depth and height and volume, and you can feel energy emotionally, and you can feel energy mentally, and you can feel energy physically for sure, and you can even feel energy spiritually. And when we just think about energy in one way, it really restricts us. So I talk a lot about this in the course, about how you can really connect with all these different dimensions of energy. Like, for instance, emotional energy, I think, is the most powerful, right? Our physical energy, yeah, that's powerful, but our emotional energy is really powerful. So if you think about the things that make you feel bad, they're typically tied to emotion, right? What makes you feel bad? So like today I had a rough day, right? I couldn't get enough done, and my schedule was just like, time was just like the devil for me today. And I had as much time today as I had yesterday, right? Like my clock wasn't any faster today than it was yesterday. But it was all how upset I got about feeling like I didn't have enough time. So it was all emotional, right? And then tomorrow I'll hopefully have a great day, and I'll be like, this is great. I feel awesome. I got so much done. And then I'll feel like I have more energy. It's crazy, right? So we don't really have this awareness of what goes on with our energy. So how do you measure your energy? Do you even know when you're on empty? I loved Snickers for the one word that was the best word ever created in marketing, which was hangry.
Hangry.
Best word ever, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Ever.
Whenever there's a Snickers on my desk, which, hasn't happened in a long time because I'm become more aware of it. But we would joke about that. Like, if a Snickers lands on my desk, I will know I'm emotionally empty. But, it also makes me think a lot about Charles. And I always, he always talks about, riders developing the virtues. And being charitable was always, one that he would speak about. And I would always think about, like, well, I can't be that charitable. Like, I'm a horse trainer. Like, I have no money to give, So like, what is that, And he was always like, give with abundance, give your knowledge, or give your encouragement, or, help someone, and it's like, well, if you're got this empty tank, it's like, that's a good way to measure it too. Like, I don't even have the capacity to be charitable, to just offer you some help, or, oh, here, let me help you with that. Or I've got 5 minutes to help you through this horse spooking at the corner. And like, you're not my student, but I can help you, and it's just even small things, but those are big things, you know, to like, oh, I feel less charitable, or I feel less patient or compassionate, or, you know, I don't have time to hear your problems, you know, and it's like, that's all part of that. It's like, well, because you feel empty, that this person then becomes this, like, you know, we always joke that it's like a time suck, like, oh, don't talk to Mary Sue, you know, it's just gonna just suck you in, you know, and it's like, oh, she's a time suck. But it's like, your level of energy too is going to be depleted, but you're also just going to be like annoyed with her if you don't have that capacity to even be friendly about it and like come in goodwill, you know.
It's such a conundrum, right? That what you're talking about there with being generous and contributing to others, right? So when your tank is empty, emotions and cognitions like generosity, curiosity, perspective, giving, connecting, those all go out the door because your brain, because your brain interprets your level of energy as insufficient for producing that. Like that's a waste, right? You know, like,
we're just trying to stay alive here.
Exactly. It's why horses can poop on the run, right? Because they've got to be able to get out of Dodge. And right, but humans don't, right? We shut everything down, right? When we get upset, we shut everything down. Why do you think we have so many gastrointestinal issues, right? Because when we become, when we have lower energy, our body goes into threat, goes into survival, and lots of things shut down. Immune response, hormone production, things. And this is where a lot of our preventable diseases and illnesses come from. But the interesting thing is that if somehow you rally and muster the energy to support someone or help them, that is the gift of giving, right?
Well, and that's that like love feeling,
and that
cures your ailments.
It gives you energy, right? Like that, creating that connection, it gives you energy, because when you connect with someone else, you get these great connection hormones, right? You get oxytocin, the elixir of life, right? You get dopamine, serotonin.
Just talked to my body worker today about this, of, you know, the love hormones of like, whether that's you look at the sunset and you're like, God, that's so breathtaking. Or like, sometimes I'm just like, I look at the trees and I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful. And I'm like, you know, that you can, but those are the healing hormones. It's incredible.
Oh my God, totally. Ready? Here's my super instant recharge.
Exactly.
That's Ted, my donkey, my rescue donkey. Ted. I love him so much. And if I'm like, every time I turn on my phone, I'm like, oh, little oxytocin right there.
Yeah.
Right. So this is one of the things that I really push heavily in the course, is that it's not just about being resilient. It's about having recovery. It's about recovering your energy, right? So I do a lot of work in the corporate world, and the fascinating, interesting thing in the corporate world was about 10 years ago, resilience became like the corporate buzzword. Are you resilient? Well, you know what? After 10 years, yes, everybody in the corporate world, if they made it to my class, were resilient, right? If you're on this web event, you're resilient, right? I do a lot of work with frontline healthcare workers. They are beyond resilient. They don't want to hear about resilience anymore, right? Like it's almost insulting to talk to them about how resilient they need to be, because they already are. So if you're upright, you already have resilience. Okay. Now, some people have more resilience than others. But really, if we're just leaning on that, again, we're not building anything. We're just leaning on what's already there. And the more we lean, the weaker it becomes. So it's really about creating this new way to think about stress and recovery and balancing them. Right. So and that's really, this has been, if you've worked with me individually, and I don't know if there's anybody on here besides you that I've worked with, but if anyone has worked with me individually, they know that this is where I start, you know, like, let's get your energy right. Let's get you the foundation for energy, because once you have good energy, you can learn. You can't learn if you're energetically depleted. Hey,
Yeah.
Mamie. If you, I just saw in the chat, like if you have to get your energy before you can build anything on top of it. If you think about the training scale, it's the same
Mhm.
thing. Like you have to start with the foundation, and then that goes up, that covers everything as you go. And as you go up, and you continue, and you want to perform better, and you want to learn more, and you want to increase your this, that, or the other, you're always having to raise your energy to the next level of performance. But now you'll have the tools to do that, and we just don't
Well,
realize that we're missing them.
no, and I think it's really interesting too, because I always tell this story that I'm like, Dr. Jenny always says, like, if you're in the plane and there's a lack of oxygen, like you have to put your mask on first in order to help anyone around you. And like I've taken that to heart since 2009 when we first met, and I've always thought about that. But now I feel like you've really defined it of like, but what is that oxygen mask? Like, yes, you need to take care of you before you can help others, or you need to like take care of you before you can ride and be better rider for your horse. But like, what is being a better you? And like, how do I reconnect to my energy source for me, and it's like that self growth of like, yeah, it isn't just, yes, it's a great image to be like, gotta put my mask on first, because if I'm not at 100%, I can't help others or run a good family or run a good business or whatever you're in charge of, because we're in charge of a lot of things nowadays. But it's like, what exactly is taking care of yourself? Like the self-care, I feel like self-care and like resilience was kind of like in the same, like, take care of yourself. And it's like, but what does that mean? And I think it's also interesting that everyone's a little bit different. We always have this idea that like, oh, to make it to the Olympics, you need to be up at 4 a.m. and crazy and training. And I stable at the same place with Sabine Shoot-Carey, who's just like fifth of the Olympics, and she's an amazing, extraordinary human being, and I love her, and she's amazing. And she was like, I take weekends off. I was like, okay, can we just like time out a second? Because like, you're an Olympian and you're like getting ready for the Olympics, and you work 5 days in a row and you take weekends off. Like you actually work like a normal job. Can we like repeat that again? And I will definitely going to talk to her and get her on the podcast again, or maybe even in the academy of like, let's talk about that. And she could feel when she was in Florida, like starting to be a little depleted because she wasn't taking the weekends off, and I said, well, you need to make sure like you do you, like, that works for you. So make sure you take care about that, and that's fascinating because everyone thinks, well, to be a high performance person, you need to work 18 hours a day and get no sleep and wake up at 4 and go running and work out and then meditate, and then you'll make it. And
That'll
like,
put the energy back
right, exactly,
in your tank.
Like, if that's not true for you, then do not do that. Like find out, maybe it's reading a book, maybe it's knitting, maybe it's you got to go for a bike ride, or just sit alone in nature, or like whatever it is that you feel like full again from, that's a personal journey you got to kind of look at and figure out.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about her that way. When I was at the last NC2A Division I championships for swimming I was helping the UCLA team. And there was a Stanford swimmer who, was athlete of the meet, and she won every event she was in and set an American record in every event that she was in. Like she had like the perfect meet. And we were hanging out in the coach's room, and I was talking to the Stanford coach, her coach, and there were a couple of us talking, and he said, she has perfected recovering.
Interesting.
And I was like, what? Say that again. And she's like,
yeah.
He said, she's masterful at her recovery. She spends as much energy on her recovery as she, it is 50% of her training is recovery. And I remember watching Tom Jager 20 years ago at UCLA, 1985, so longer than that, at UCLA, watching him recover, and he spent so much time just being quiet and letting his body recover from the stress of the activity. And imagine if we did that. Now, you talk about going out and being in nature and, watching sunsets and meditating and all those kinds of things. Those are the bigger picture items. One of the things that I'd really love to leave people with is the idea of recovering frequently throughout the day, every hour, what can you do for yourself? And that's a super hot tip. Every hour, set an alarm to spend 60 seconds doing something that gives you pleasure. And then that can be your form of recovery, because we save it up till the evening. And this is what I see happens a lot, and people are like, I'll just work really, really hard, and then I'll just collapse on the couch in front of the TV for a couple of hours, eat a really crappy
and veg out.
And veg out. And that's not really recovery. That's more like rehabilitation.
That's a different thing.
Right.
Well, I was just listening to this interesting podcast, the Rich Roll podcast, and he was talking about one of the people that were being interviewed. He's a writer, and he talked about he brings forth the 4 cardinal virtues and makes it every day a little bit more normal, that you can be, courage, not overdoing things, having the wisdom, and these I can't remember all of them, but his point was, he's writing this book. And he's like, I find it really important to just stay at my fighting weight. And I love that, because he doesn't write the book and then take a vacation from writing. He's writing these, he's just in a constant state of writing and being curious, like you said, and writing it down. And he called it I just need to stay at my fighting weight. And I was like, that is amazing advice, to just this binging this energy and then resting, or when we have a bit of a binging culture of there isn't just this easy, consistent, keep doing it, chop the wood, chop a little every day. We put it off, and then we're oh my God, I gotta chop all the wood for the winter. And it was okay, but if you just chop 2 things a day, you would have that big pile of wood that you need, but there is this the meditation, just do it a little bit every day, and then it becomes part of you. And this stay at your fighting weight, we eat healthy, and then we binge and just and then I have a cheat day, and it's or you could just be healthy all the time. And it's just this interesting, just stay at your fighting weight was just a really powerful thing, which is exactly what you were saying, just a little bit, all the time.
Yeah. That I really like that. I've not heard that term, fighting weight, in a really long time.
Well, and that goes with that recovery of that she just did a lot. Balance. Yeah. And then recovered as much. And then she didn't do a lot, and then crash and burn. She did a lot, she rested. She did a lot, right. She rested.
Yeah, her recovery matched her stress.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, that's homeostasis. That's when you get to a place of balance where you're way more adjustable and actually way more resilient. Right. Because you end up having the reserves. And so that makes a huge difference. That's really cool. I like that, fighting weight. I'm going to figure out how to steal that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we are at 9:05. I wanted to see if anybody.
Wow, that went fast.
It went really fast.
As always.
Lots of great comments and some questions.
I could talk to you all day, JJ.
I know. We're oh, and then this.
Does anybody have any additional questions you'd like to ask either JJ or Dr. Jenny? I know there were a couple that were popped in up top earlier on, one from Carol about energy and motivation during hormonal changes of menopause.
Ooh, how did I miss that? I'm right there with you, honey.
Me too now. Me too.
Was that too much? Overshare? Too soon?
Yay, menopause, Angela.
Yay, menopause, fun times.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I love it because Meta doesn't call them hot flashes, she calls them power surges.
I like that.
Isn't that great?
I'm gonna take that. Yep.
We're giving Meta. Okay, so whoever wrote that question, could you put it in again? But so here's the thing is when we have stuff going on with our bodies that we don't totally understand, we can make up stories about it, and then we can have mental, emotional stress on top of physical stress. When our bodies are transitioning, like especially with a life transition, like getting your period or stopping your period, your body needs time to adjust to it. It's not just your uterus that is adjusting to no longer having your period or no longer menstruating. So it doesn't matter with anything, right? So JJ, you just had this surgery that upended everything in your system. And the reason why they told you to not go back too quickly was because it wasn't just about your scars. It was about like your fascia changed, your weight changed, right? Your balance changed. Your body had to heal from the inside. Your like all of your immune, armies that charged to the rescue to defend you from your surgery. Like there was a whole systemic change that happened like that, but takes a while to recover from. Okay. So like with menopause, what I noticed was like when I'd get my little power surges, right? Like I'd need something. I'd need to either drink something or eat something or sit down and rest for a couple of minutes, and that made them go by quicker, right? Because that's my body using a ton of energy. If I'm having a hot flash, right, my body is expending energy. So that's the spend portion. Then I figured out what do I need to do to restore while this is happening, right? You want to get so good at it that you can recover on the fly, right? You're on your horse, something happens, you miss something goes wrong, you make an error in a test, you have a refusal at a jump. How do you recover very quickly? You have to be good at recovery. You have to practice recovery. You have to turn it into a practice in order for it to be a skill set that you can rely on.
Great.
Okay, awesome. Introvert, extrovert spectrum, how does that affect energy? So that's a super good question. It's actually really easy. It's really easy. So we have introvert and extrovert wrong. We have introvert defined as shy and extrovert defined as outgoing. And that's not it at all.
I'm actually an introvert.
Yeah, right? Totally, right?
Because I get my energy by being by myself.
Alone. That's how you recharge. Introverts recharge internally. Extroverts recharge externally. So I know Linda Pirelli. Linda Pirelli and I are good friends, and we're extroverts. And we laugh all the time about poor Meta, our introvert, and how like we're like, and she's like, do I have to go? Do I have to talk to somebody? Can't I just go sit at home alone? And like death to an extrovert is someone wearing headphones, or, you get in the car and your cell phone's dead and you don't have a charger, like those are things that are like death to an extrovert. So if you know where your energy gets recharged, like, as we age, like I used to be like such a crazy extrovert. I couldn't stand to be alone. Now I crave being alone. So we do evolve and change and adjust, but know best where you recover and how you recover your energy, whether it's with people or not. And if you have a job like you have, JJ, where you are around people all day, then you have to be really intentional,
cognizant
about your alone time.
So
that would be the answer to that. Is it possible to meditate without physical stillness? It is, but it's different. And what you really need to start with that quiet body so you can hear your mind. When your body's moving, your brain is thinking about your body moving. And you will connect and be able to hear and see different things if you can still your body. Just start for a minute. See if you can do it for a minute, Mary Pat, and then grow from there.
And I felt like the meditation sitting, and no, I'm actually sitting in my bedroom on the floor, like, you know, really meditating has helped my riding a lot. But you do get to like a meditative, inward focused, like washover. You can get there better, but it's totally different in the way that like you're saying, like as you're physically moving and riding, you're getting these different stimuli of what's happening in the horse and all that. But Mary Pat, like definitely meditating will improve your ability to get meditative while riding, but it won't be the same thing.
So there's 4 main brainwaves states, and meditation is one of them. And if you're never flexing that brainwave, it's like never using your arm, right? So meditation is they call it a practice. It's a training, you know, it is a training. And for me, it is, you know, every athlete I work with, I make them meditate. You have to meditate in order to work with
you must do this. Yes.
You must meditate.
So
because it makes that muscle strong.
So could you also talk about the idea of noticing things in meditation? Because there was a question that's interesting, and I suspect the answer will be interesting, is what developments have you noticed about your writing that have become different, JJ? But also, what about thinking about specific things while meditating?
I think for me, like for me, meditation has helped my writing. I mean, you know, having cancer really changed things too. So it's all kind of interrelated for me. It's made me, in general, like having cancer has been an incredibly grateful experience. Like I am just so much more grateful and see everything a little bit more clear. Like the trees are greener, the sunset's brighter. I love my horses. I love riding. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to do it. I'm so grateful, you know, so that has been a really, I've always been positive, but this is like really like exploded. And then the meditation has really helped me become way more present, so that I'm like truly, like in the meditation practice, being able to notice things that arise, but not pass judgment on them. And so I'm like, not attached to a lot of the things either I'm physically feeling or like the things I'm thinking about. Like that's just a thought, and that doesn't need to like latch on and be this truth. It just is like a thought I had, or how I felt about something, or that I've got this itch I need to scratch. I don't actually need to do that, and I can just be still. And so practicing that muscle has helped me in my riding be way more present, and also just, oh, I'm getting this feedback from this horse and I don't need to react to that. It's not personal. It's just feedback, and I can feel and hear his feedback way more clear, because it's doesn't need to like travel through all of the junk in my head. I like hear his story much clearer because I'm clear and I'm quiet. So then when you're quiet, you can hear a lot better.
Wow. That is awesome. That's really awesome. That's really cool. You know, I think that one of the ways that meditation works is that the better you become at quieting your mind, I don't know how to use that as a verb, making your mind quiet, and then being the observer, right? So a lot of the things that when you study, and I recommend like studying, follow someone who is a meditation teacher, a reputable one, John Kabat-Zinn. He's phenomenal. He's the one who, his first book was called Full Catastrophe Living. And he did the mindfulness-based stress reduction. So MBSR meditation came from, he's a physician. Phenomenal. His trainings are incredible. Pema Chodron, the Dalai Lama. I always say it wrong. Thich Nhat.
Oh, I don't even try to pronounce him, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
But there are a lot of really phenomenal meditation teachers who do it not just to teach. I would follow someone who does meditation as a lifestyle, not as, like someone who really, really has studied. David G is one of my favorite on Insight Timer. It's just J.I. is his last name, David G. And he, spent a decade in India studying. So, you want to follow someone like that. Bye, Anna. Thanks for staying up late with us. So I found that the more that I was able to make my mind quiet, the deeper thoughts I would hear. And to get very personal, my mom passed away about 3.5 years ago, and she was a very challenging person. And when she died, we were at the worst place our relationship had been in the history of my life. And it left me like just a wreck and horrifically incomplete. And I couldn't give her a call and say, hey, let's sort this out. And so I actually did it with guidance from a friend who is a very long-term ahead of me meditator. And I really was able to get to some places in my mind and see things without all of that horrible emotion about my mom. And it took about a year. And I have like this amazing, fantastic relationship with my mom because of my meditation. And my 87-year-old dad just moved in with us. And night before last at dinner, he's like, you talk so much about how great your relationship is with your mom. Well, I've been thinking about her and talking to her, and I've been apologizing.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. So, that's to me, when I hear my problems in a different way when I'm meditating. I hear my answers in a different way when I'm meditating. I have access to more of my mind and my brain from my meditation is kind of the best way I can think to describe it.
Yeah, that's powerful, really powerful. Yeah, it's really where so much of the healing happens, just like within your own self.
Yeah. So we have, and that's kind of like if you think about energy and you're not thinking about energy in terms of, am I tired or not? But you think about energy in terms of the energy that you feel when you're connected to someone, or the energy that you feel when you like, I love to walk my dog at night and look at the stars and the moon, and like the energy that I feel when I'm outside and dark is just really tremendous. Or the sunset or the sunrise, or like you look up in the beautiful sky, or you walk into the barn and your horse nickers, like, or you have a great ride, or you have a great test, or whatever. All of those things, those are energetic events. And so if you have the physical, mental, emotional energy in your body to be able to connect with those, then that's icing.
Yep. Awesome. Cerise, do we have any more questions?
Just one more from Abby Krupa asking, how often and how long do you meditate?
I'm a shorty because I'm just learning, but it's already been an incredible, powerful experience. But I do a guided, and it's like 10 minutes. So, I mean, that's one of those things, like I do about 20 minutes of yoga, and then I do 10 minutes of meditation, and it's been life-changing.
That's a super recipe. That's a super recipe. Like you prepare the body and then you prepare the mind. I've been meditating for a long time. So I meditate daily. and mine range from 30 to 50 minutes, sometimes an hour. Like if I can set aside the time successfully, which I'm not always successful with, I make a half an hour non-negotiable. But an hour has become much more tolerable. 45 minutes is pretty good. But like I said, I've been meditating for 30 years. So start like 10 minutes is awesome. Awesome. If you can do 10 minutes once or twice a day, every single day, in the literature, the sweet spot is 20 minutes twice a day. That's like, if you want to have 20 minutes twice a day is where they have the most changes, like in a 3-month period of time. Build up to that, right? There's changes in the composition of the amygdala, right? The gray matter, the area of the brain under scan, they call the amygdala, which is the fight or flight stage, that will decrease in size. The hippocampi, which are the good parts of the brain, that will increase in size over a 3-month period of 20 minutes twice a day meditation.
Interesting. All right. So we all learned this is important. And I think it's also like what is empty tank syndrome? I think that's important to first recognize, like, what is it? How many symptoms on that list do I have? But I think we all have it in some capacity, and it's important to find out what you like to do, what brings you the feeling of being energetic because you're truly recovered. That's huge.
Yeah. And just remember, it's a gauge, like it's just like your car, you're gonna have more gas and less gas and more energy and less energy every day throughout the day.
And you got to figure out how to fill up your tank.
I couldn't say it better myself.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jenny, for sharing all your insights. And we're all going to check out your website, and I'm sure it's already in the comments below. And I know I'm signing up.
This has been absolutely wonderful. We've had so many guests tonight, which is just so exciting. So thank everybody. Thank you all for joining us. It was just absolutely wonderful. Dr. Jenny is one of the few people that I've heard, and I'm kind of a brain geek myself, but who can explain the science of brains in an engaging way that, doesn't make most people want to fall asleep. So I did make sure to put Dr. Jenny's new website, emptytanksyndrome.com, in the chat for everybody. For everyone that wants to join and become a member of Team Tate Academy, we'll also make sure to send you reminders and let you know when the course is available. It should be out in January of 2022. The website is beautiful. There's lots of information on the website that I'm sure you can all identify with. And then again, just a reminder that we have 3 more days of open enrollment for Team Tate Academy, and you can use the coupon code winter 2021 for 15% off annual apprentice and student memberships. If you loved being able to attend tonight's Zoom meeting, we do this every single month, and oftentimes
we do
every single month. Dr. Jenny's not always with us. JJ does lectures with slides and great visual presentations. Of course, often we'll have special guests like Dr. Jenny attend, and it's just absolutely amazing. And that's included with the apprentice level membership. JJ, did you want to say anything more about that?
No, I mean, I just, I'm so grateful that Dr. Jenny joined us tonight. I think it's always awesome to, have experts in the field, encourage us to, I always say this too, which is one of the reasons why we started the Academy, is because I'm like, it's not just about being a great rider. Like, that's part of it, but we really want to speak to the spirit of the person, and making sure our well-being is well looked after, because of course we want to show up the best we can for our horses. And so it's just, I'm so grateful to Dr. Jenny for coming on, and yeah, I highly recommend the Academy. We love bringing education to you guys at home. And you can read all about it and check us all out and sign up by Friday, because then we're going to close the doors again. But we've
Absolutely.
already got 700 members, and we'd love more people to join, because we love sharing dressage with everybody.
Awesome.
I think this is great. I love the Academy because you can learn at your own pace, and you can seek, find what it is you need to learn. And I love how you bring so much into it. Like, it is not just the JJ Tate show. It is really about creating an environment and a culture and a community to help people learn. And I think that has been so missing, in equestrian, and especially in dressage. And so I just love it. So super cool. Well done.
That just makes me like so happy that you say that, because I did, and we've talked about this before too. Like, I always felt like it was always like all these big secrets of all these top riders, like had all these secrets. And I'm like, but like, how do you do that? And I'm like, but like, why? And like, it's just been such a joy to like share that and bring that to people who are at home wondering, well, how do you get a horse to do that? How do you introduce that? And it's like, people are like, I got a question. I'm like, I got an answer, because I have like suffered and figured it out, over all these years, with great guidance. Like, I've had great teachers, and I quote them all in the Academy. It's not like I made this up. Like, it's just, it's worked. And so I want to share it with, and even in the Academy, you see it work with a rescue horse, with a 20-year-old Morgan, with a Grand Prix horse.
Oh.
Like, it's not just like these
I see
fancy
your
dressage.
posts. I see the posts on Facebook. They're incredible. They're amazing.
Well, we're really proud of it, and we want like everyone to join our community, because it's fun.
Beautiful.
And thank you again so much for being with us tonight. It's awesome.
Listen, thank you for sharing my message with your community. I appreciate that. That's super generous. I love that. I love I just adore you. So
ditto. I'm like, Dr. Jenny is one of my favorite people.
Likewise.
So
likewise.
That was awesome. Thank you guys so much.
That was really great. Thank you everyone for your focus and your energy.